Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Streamed live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis, and I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation. And I'm joined this morning by my good friend and co-host,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Tommy. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well. I'm doing very, very well. I must say I'm a little bit fatigued. I am fully vaccinated. And so the vaccination is working in my system, slowing me down just a little bit. But as always, I'm excited to be with you today in our community, having these diversity conversations.
Absolutely, man. Same here, fully vaccinated, and some minor discomfort for a short period of time. But ultimately, man, we are coming out of the fear and the tremendously negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. How was your week, man? Let's talk about how the week was.
Yeah, so my week was pretty busy. Again, Eric, with the virtual platforms that we are on so often, I personally have a tendency to overbook my schedule.
I understand that.
Yeah, because I don't have to commute, get in the car, travel 20 or 30 minutes, get set up.
Right.
So I sometimes book if a training or a conversation is going to end at 10 a.m., I'll book another at 11 to 12.
Ooh,
have a quick lunch for 30 minutes and then go 12:30 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, etc.
Right.
This week, by Wednesday, I was on that camel. It was hump week. It was hump week Wednesday. But overall, it went great. We got some new clients. I participated in some rich conversations with some other people, not clients, but just other people who invited me.
Right.
And it was great. It was great.
Right. Yeah, it's I tell people, man, in these Zooms anymore, it feels like it's Monday, then it's Friday, then it's Monday, then it's Friday. Yeah. We don't even feel like we get a weekend, man. You just keep it going, bro. But you know what? You and I remember the lonely days
we do.
of not doing a lot of work. Every entrepreneur has had that experience. And I know you made the same promise to God. God, I will not complain. If you just give me some business, Lord. And now we're trying to take it back. Like, Lord, can I complain a little bit? I don't want you to hear me as saying I want you to do anything different. Don't tap nothing down,
Hey, Lord, did I really say that? Yes, son, you did. What see what happened was, Lord, I'm a child. I don't know anything. I was talking sideways.
Right, scratch that.
Yeah. I have come into myself. I understand the blessing.
Right.
And now I'm asking that you help me manage the blessing. Right. Exactly. I don't know what I said.
Exactly. And I tell you what, man. So I am so excited, Tommy. This was a great week for us as well. Got some new team members. Got some people that are working with us in different ways. I am seeing the power of inclusion, Tommy. Because you and I'll just say this for anybody that's listening right now, that you have a degree of talent. Good for you. And so you have a chance to then introduce your talent to whatever it is, whatever area of life that you're working in. But if you take your talent and you match it up, you marry it up to somebody else's talent, you're going to advance the ball. And so that's what we're seeing, Tommy, is that as we begin to add other people's thinking into the work that we're doing, our solutions are better and they are objectively better. And so I'm grateful for that, man. I had a chance to do some work with finishing up sort of the wrap up with the mediation at the University of Cincinnati between the president's office and Black students and the student government. And we had a powerful close, man. And the president is really coming back from a real significant health crisis that he experienced. But he decided to continue to move forward and wade through this process with the students. And the students were so grateful for that, Tommy. And I remember where they started. I remember where they started, Tommy, and to see them all so profoundly talk about the value of this experience and what they learned and how it impacted them. And they're so excited about the things they're going to do on a moving forward basis to address racial inequality, racism, and inclusion in the strategic ways, man. So I was really shedded a tear or two because, I'm an alum of UC and being able to see these courageous young people, but to see a president and some administrators, Dr. Lizette Marshall and Chris and others, just who are giving their all to try to get on the same page. Around creating a wonderful environment for all students. So that was moving, man. Also had a chance to work with one of my clients looking at phase 2. And I've got this wonderful CEO. Tommy, this CEO is not playing about making progress. The last time we met, I felt like we were in the Zoom, and he was like, I'm taking names, somebody's going to have to take the fall here because we're not moving fast enough. Is it the consultant? Is it you, Eric? Is it my executives? Who is it? I mean, he was like, I said, well, hold on, CEO. I said, let's just give everybody a little grace, that 2020 pandemic thing. And I said, but I'm going to come back to you as an engineer with something that is going to lay out exactly what we do on phase 2. And we came into the phase 2, man. I had my team on the Zoom. And I'll tell you, I just love the way he was on the edge of his seat with questions and comments and da-da-da. But the most beautiful sight I saw, Tommy, at the end, like this.
Yes, sir.
I'm good. He said, I'm good. Yep. No more questions. And so I feel great about that, Tommy. Isn't it exciting to work with some companies, Tommy, where the leaders are really interested and passionate around making change?
It is exciting. Right. And I say it's exciting because we do the hard work, the feeling work. And that's the empathy, that's the personalization of the work, of the journey. And then there's the kind of the logical, strategic, organizational approach as well. And then there's the community, be it the internal community or external community. But I would say it's very fulfilling when a person at that level, the C-suite level, who may not have had as much experience over the last 20, 30, 40 years as they have today. And then they get it in their soul.
Right.
And it drives their thinking and ideology. Right. And then they use their hands to leverage their power and influence to get things done.
Right.
Sometimes, Eric, there's a disconnect. I have power. I see this is the right thing to do, but I really don't feel it.
That's right.
Therefore, it's not sustainable.
Right.
It was very encouraging, very exciting when the light bulb goes off and it's like, I get it now.
Right. This week, I also had a chance to sort of brief one of my CEOs of color around the organization. And I'll tell you, Tommy, man, it was refreshing, man, to be talking to an old master, who looks like you, who's, valuing your input at a whole nother level, man. And so that was encouraging. And I was giving him a perspective and he was just frantically taking notes. And we blew through an hour and something like it was nothing. He said, Eric, if I didn't have something else, and so that was really inspiring. I've got another one of my clients that is in Minneapolis. And so the CEO sent me a letter to look over that he wanted to sort of put out to his people. And I gave him some input on that. And then I reached out to him and said, if you need me to come to Minneapolis to support you and your associates, I'll do that, because people are hurting right now, Tommy, and just a lot is going on. That's part of what you and I want to talk about today. And we want to invite our community to weigh in. Tracy Artis, so glad to have you with us this morning. Buddy Campbell, we're just grateful for anybody that will spend time with Tommy Lewis and myself as we explore these interesting, exciting, sometimes challenging diversity conversations. And so, Tommy, I raised a number of issues, and so I'm posing. So, where are the answers? And I started with this sort of the issues of violence that we're seeing. Certainly, the Derek Chauvin trial. I haven't been watching it as closely. I've been sort of watching some of the commentary around. It's just too painful to watch those things up close, man. I think that it traumatizes us further. So I haven't spent a lot of time looking directly at it, but we're sort of hearing where we are. But then other African Americans and other people of color died this week as well. Tommy, what are we experiencing, man? It looks like the pandemic was, had everybody on lockdown, and so we didn't have as much violence. And then as soon as things start opening up, we're seeing some of these challenges. And then I've got another piece of data I want to throw at you, man, that I was looking at this morning that gave me even greater concern.
So one thing that we're experiencing right now, Eric, is that as a country, maybe even as a general culture, we haven't learned.
Okay.
We haven't learned at all. What do I mean by that? They say if you haven't learned from your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And so the times that we're living in right now are the 1850s, 1860s times. Many of us were not around, but those who understand history, both the history that's told by the oppressor as well as history told by the oppressed, realize that there's some connectivity between what they experienced, our people, human beings, in the 50s, 60s of 1800s, as well as before, into the 1930s, 1940s, when we had a spike in racial and ethnic hate crimes, hate speech, hate policies, right? And now in 2020, 2021, we are repeating that history. At the end of the day, there is an undercurrent of hate. Not the country. The land itself, Eric, does not hate anything.
Okay.
Earth,
Right.
It is what it is. It will be here, right, when we all leave.
Right.
The hate is in the people that are currently have dominion on the earth.
Right.
Here's the unfortunate thing, is that there is an ideology or paradigm around education.
Right.
And that is that education is the intergenerational transmission of culture. What's happening right now? We have older generations, baby boomers, Gen X, maybe even before baby boomers, the silent or veteran generation, who has promoted and educated the next generation on who and how they hate. And that's articulated through verbal violence, written violence, and sometimes, most traumatically, Eric, physical violence. Folks are killing each other.
Right.
That's my take. Again, going back to the 1850s, 1860s, read your history. The same type of fear was bestowed upon marginalized communities.
Right. And what is sort of gotten in my mind a bit, Tommy, as we think about George Floyd and Derek Chauvin, is that I've described it almost like this, that we're traumatized in ways that may supersede Jim Crow times, and because we're seeing it all the time. In other words, we heard about lynchings, but we didn't all see them.
Yeah.
And so we have to sort of watch Derek Chauvin put his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, 29 seconds. And here's the scary part, Tommy, that with all the case that the prosecutor has put on, we're still left wondering if Derek Chauvin is going to be found guilty.
Yeah.
So the thought goes through our minds, does it take all of this to be able to prove one rogue wrong officer should be put in jail for his crimes? And then with all of this, do we still have to wonder whether he will be found guilty? And so how high is that, that line? And so I think that's part of the challenge that we face. And then, that's not even over. And another young man is killed. Yeah. And so, but Tommy, here's another little thing. I'm gonna throw a little sand in the wound in this way. So I started looking at the statistics, Tommy, for sort of unarmed Black people, or Black people that are killed by the cops every year. And it's about 230 to 250. And then I looked at another number. How many Black people die from homicide each year? And that's about 7,400. So Tommy, help me to understand where we should be, where our thinking should be when we look at what's happening with police officers, and certainly that's tragic, but that we are dying at the hands of other Black people 30 times that. Yeah. What's your perspective on it, Tommy? And why don't we hear more about that, talk more about that?
So one is it's the psychological impact of oppression through generations. What happens is that those people who are marginalized and oppressed, discriminated against, prejudiced against, over time, their trauma becomes re-traumatization, and re-traumatization. Yeah. And so coupled with institutional and structural systems that keep them bound in certain communities of poverty, keep them bound from access to employment and health care, keep them bound with real good access, easy access to vices like drugs, alcohol, and guns, and the expression of some form of violence. So coupled with all that, when there's literally nothing else to do, and one is psychologically filled with hate about their lived conditions, that I don't want to be here, I did not put myself here, and the generations before me experienced the same, I am going to lash out.
Right.
And unfortunately, that lashing out is within the immediate community.
Right.
Because Eric, if I'm in a particular community,
right,
no income, limited transportation, and all that good stuff, I am not going to travel an hour to another community
to go kill them.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna do that dirt right here. Those are my people.
Right. And every community does that. So there's more Black on Black crime, white on white crime, Latinx crime on Latinx crime. Everybody's killing the people that are mostly around them. And I think that so for me, I do believe that if my child dies, I'm not especially put at ease if their killer is somebody that looks like them. So I think that we really do have challenges that we have to be working on multiple fronts to sort of deal with the violence that exists in the world around us. We're seeing that uptick in violence against the Asian community, 3,800, sort of racist incidents over the last year, mostly against women. And Tommy, here's the thing. I want to jump to this just a little bit. And if our community wants to weigh in, I certainly welcome that. But Tommy, I was looking at this article called "The Fractured Power: How to Overcome Tribalism," and it was an article that was written by a former U.S. ambassador to the African Union, and he talked about this conflict assessment framework, the CAF framework, that America uses to sort of begin to analyze the threat of tribalism in countries around the world. And we've never really utilized that on ourselves. looking at the kind of civil unrest and political unrest that's happening to determine what is the risk that that conflict has, not only over there, but in other places around the world. And we are now one of the highest on that, sort of on that rating around division. And yet we don't reckon with that. And Tommy, I look at that and say, then who is working strategically on that? And how does all this tie together? And how does our work sort of land in the midst of this?
Well, there's a number of people and organizations and systems working in tandem toward it. The challenge is so large and extreme that it's very difficult to see the 100, 200, 300 organizations that are trying to positively impact this challenge. When you have a few 100 million people embedded in this. And so in every community, there are people that are doing what they do. Some of it is not known or heard, Eric. Some of it is not known or heard. And They're doing it basically, without recognition, without the need of recognition. So that's a great question, because we can't put our thumb on who exactly is moving the needle.
Right.
Where we have a number of folks, and then we just, we have haters that keep us talking as well.
Right. I don't know what this comment is here. I've had enough of this. I won't let my child become a victim of history, or the two of you. I don't know what that means. But I think that these issues are complex. There are no easy answers to them. We have to be able to explore where we are and why we are there. And I think that the limitations in our thinking really constrain our ability to find solutions. And so I believe that sometimes we sit back, and part of what they say about tribalism is that when it gets difficult is when it gets so ingrained that when your cultural and religious elements then get tied into your politics, then you start getting into a place where it's harder for you to untangle yourself from that process. And so that is a part of what we're seeing. And so you and I professionally are committed to trying to untangle those things so that people might be able to live in harmony and be able to achieve their best life by working collaboratively, as opposed to working against one another. And to do that, we've got to take some time to explore all angles of where we are. I love the way that you came back and answered the question around, why do we see so much violence against ourselves? Well, if you put you redline people into neighborhoods that they can only get housing with other poor people, and that's all you see on a regular basis, then it's going to impact sort of how, and then we've seen all the things around drugs and guns and all those things and how they're poured into our communities. Those things create challenges.
Yeah, they create challenges, Eric. And as you were sharing, I'm thinking, we're talking about violence and hate and oppression, and we have some other things to talk about as well. But I would say that if you don't like hate, if you don't like being a part of hate or seeing hate or being re-traumatized by hate, either speech or actions, then you're leaning in toward the solution.
Okay.
In other words, we have to recognize that it exists.
Right. That's right. You head out the sand.
Right. And so if you are one, or we are one that says, I see it, I'll close my eyes. I hear it, I'll close my ears, right? And I actually hear people doing it such that I'm not going to say anything. I'll close my mouth to not be an advocate for love or for equity or for freedom for all. Then we may be a part of the problem, right? Ignorance is bliss.
Right.
Ignorance is bliss. And then ignorance is ignorance.
Right.
So when you don't, when we don't know, don't understand, sometimes there's some misinformation. Sometimes there's a hidden or ulterior motive around our thoughts, comments, and actions.
So as we look at, I think that number one, I don't think that we spend enough time celebrating things that are positive.
Yep.
Our young people, some of the wonderful things that they're doing on a regular basis. These students that I was working with at the University of Cincinnati, many of the administrators noted that when they were in college, they reflected back on what they were doing when they were at those ages. And their conclusion was, I was nowhere close to that. Mm. I think that we are seeing an increase in activism from young people. Young people that are going into workforce are now placing greater demands on institutions to take action to do what's right, and sort of focus on impacting the communities in more positive ways. I think that that's a change that we can reflect on and say that that's a positive change.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of advocacy that's happening right now, and kudos to the younger generation. Whatever you would consider younger, even if it's 1 year younger than you, they're younger. Or it can be all the way down to grammar school. The next generation has a very different lived experience. And COVID of last year, as well as this year, it proved how flexible, how resilient the students of this day are. Right? The students were very resilient to adapting to certain changes in the educational process, which was very different than their parents and grandparents. Parents and grandparents say, no, you got to go into the building. No, you don't protest, you just take it. Or you protest in a way that is receivable to the person or people that is discriminating or oppressing you. Right? That is an oxymoron, right? To go to the people, whoever that is, right? A woman going to men and saying, all of you all are sexist, and I want you to feel comfortable with me being uncomfortable. What? Eric, that's what people are asking now. That's what they're asking. They're asking, how can you make me feel comfortable having this discussion, having this conversation? How can you make me feel comfortable?
Right.
I don't know how I can make you feel comfortable.
Right.
But I can have the conversation, right? Without silliness, right? We can have fun, but then it's like, I don't know what that means, right? Doesn't make any sense, right? Poof, be gone.
Right. Not gonna happen. You're gonna have to put some work into bringing about change. Let me ask you this, Tommy. This is a sort of another reality for you and I. When a person gets up every day, you have decisions that you can make. One of the ones that you and I have to make is how much time we spend focusing on solving problems and challenges that affect us, our family, and our cultural, group, versus, trying to bring about solutions in the broader society. How do you sort of balance, and it may not even be intentional, but how do you think about that, Tommy? Because some people have dedicated their lives to dealing with things that affect Black people and other people of color and other marginalized people. And some people feel like what their calling is to sort of deal with issues across the broader society. How should people think about that? How do you think about that?
That's a great question, Eric, because for me, it's not an easy answer at all. It's actually a consistent debate, an internal debate, a struggle between being a humanistic person to want the best out of humans, like you share in your music video, Fight for Humanity, right? That's one piece. And then the other piece is, if we're all humans, why is my experience so very different? And I didn't ask for it. And so that process can be exhausting. It takes a lot of work to get up and fight against things that are very, very real, but others may not think they're real. Let me
Right.
give you an example.
Right.
Uh, I'm able-bodied right now, God willing.
Right.
There's been times as an able-bodied person, I've I've woken up in the morning and had some stiffness, some soreness, could not move as well as I did the day before. And so I think in my head, I say out loud, Eric, I wonder what this is. And my
Right.
back, this is I need to slow down, get this fixed. I may call the doctor. Hey doc, what's going on? Right? Does a little twist, do a little blood work, right? That's a privilege.
Mhm.
What if I was disabled? And when I woke up in the morning, I had to think about my limitations, right? And one limitation is, how do I get out of the bed?
Right.
Eric, everyone doesn't get out of the bed.
Right.
There are people right now that are bedridden.
Right.
There are people around them caring for their every need, food, water, bathing, etc. And so for me to wake up in the morning, I have to kind of remove those barriers of my own privilege.
Mm.
And that's what motivates me to work with and help other people, that I acknowledge my privilege and I want to ensure that any challenges you have, if I'm around, I can help remove those challenges or assist you in dealing with those challenges. That
Mhm.
is a cognitive decision I made, conscious decision.
Right. And so I'm not here, you're not here, we're not here to be critical of people for whatever choice they make.
Not at all.
Everybody has the free will to make whatever choice you want to make. But I find it sort of a part of my character, a part of my makeup, a part of my calling to be multifaceted. In other words, to respond to the issues of my own family, to work on the issues inside of me, to try to help be an advocate, to address issues that happen within our community, but also to build bridges across all communities and to have love for humankind. Because I believe that without that, we're just caught up in tribalism.
Yep.
As I was looking at this, Tommy, man, I was just I was looking at this and I was so fascinated. And they gave some sort of I was thinking about this and I was thinking Tommy's great debate.
Mhm.
That's part of what they're saying is one of the solutions, that people have to be able to get into intelligently debating ideas and not get so tied up into their loyalty to their own tribe
Yeah.
that they no longer have the freedom, because part of this unhealthy tribalism is restricting the freedom that people have to connect with other communities outside their own.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so what you're doing there, and I want you to talk a bit about that great debate, but a part of what you're doing there is the answer.
Yep.
It means that we have to find healthier ways to debate ideas and to not find ourselves getting trapped up into ignorant loyalty to our tribe without thought and without having the freedom to expand our mental boundaries, if you will.
Yeah. The great debate, Eric, the great debate that I've subscribed to was created in the fall of 1985 at Tennessee State University by Dr. Amiri El Hadid, and he created it as a professor on campus, and he observed that although there were collegiate students on campus, in the classroom they were not always in intellectual discourse. It was more like the educational banking system.
Okay.
And that banking system is teacher or professor knows, they make a deposit in the student that does not know. The student returns for another deposit, another deposit, another deposit, but rarely does that student challenge the deposit.
Mm.
Right. So the Great Debate was founded as an intellectual and a cultural forum debating contemporary issues of the day.
Mm.
In 1990, the Great Debate issue was, is America ready for a Black president?
Okay.
That was in 1990.
Right.
And I wanted to emphasize that because some of us, myself included, may say, we've always been asking that question. But did we debate both sides and all sides?
Right.
So the sides are from one side, maybe a Dr. King perspective, and then a Malcolm X perspective, and maybe a synthesis of the two.
Right.
The skill is, although I am of my particular tribe, my thought, my experience, can I articulate civilly my
Mm-hmm.
points?
Mm.
Can I listen actively and civilly to your points?
Right.
And is there any synthesis, common ground, such that I don't necessarily win and I don't necessarily lose? Because what happens is, Eric, that most times in competition or debate, people get riled up about winning or losing and don't
Right.
really understand the journey of learning discourse.
Okay.
So I know I've used the word discourse many times. You all can look it up,
Right.
right? But the Great Debate since 1985 has traveled the country, and last evening we had a virtual Great Debate
Right.
with with Kentucky State University and Xavier University, and the topic was, "This is America: Hope, Hate, or Hypocrisy."
Ooh. Woo.
And,
Woo.
and the students came with it. These are young people, and they came with it. And so I look forward to posting, for those who missed it, I look forward to posting on Monday or Tuesday the Great Debate. The producers are packaging it for
Right.
social media. But yeah, we've been doing it since 1985.
That's awesome. Tommy, give us a sense of some of the issues that were being raised in the Great Debate.
Yeah. So a few issues. One was that America has never lived up to its true creed.
Okay.
Its true creed around freedom and liberty for all. That even though that creed was created at a certain time where other human beings were enslaved, and that they were not considered human, or they were not considered part of the all. Now, in recent years, in present day, the point was, are we still living in the creed of 500 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the point around, what is the culture of America?
Mm.
And who tells that story, that narrative?
Right.
Another issue that came out is that even with the acts of hate, violence, bias of yesteryear, those acts continue even as recent as yesterday.
Right.
So the point was being made, one, who or what is doing the violence? Call that out. Who? What culture is doing that violence?
Right.
And two, how are those that are impacted by the violence responding such that they create change? In other words,
Mm.
the point came up, if a young boy gets shot and killed again tomorrow, and that community raises up, they end up on television talking about, so be it a homicide or a police shooting, whatever the case may be, and they're talking about enough is enough. When does actually enough become enough?
Right.
Right. So we were talking about that. The students were speaking from the Malcolm X perspective from the 50s and the 60s, as well as connecting that to modern day.
Right.
And the Malcolm X perspective one was, protect your culture, your own identity first. And he says, is racial. Some folks are racially and ethnically unidentifiable. Right. Dr. King turned the other cheek. Malcolm X said, you'll run out of cheeks. So
Right.
that's what they were debating yesterday. That I think
Right.
we run out of cheats and we don't know what America is. Is it hope? Is it hate? Or
Right.
is it hypocrisy? That was a great debate.
I love that. And then I want to pivot from that and say, let's juxtapose what the students did yesterday
Yeah.
up against what I saw yesterday on TV with Jim Jordan attacking Dr. Fauci
I
around,
didn't hear about that.
yeah, around his freedoms to not have to wear a mask. And he was literally blaming Dr. Fauci for taking away our voice and our freedoms to live how we want to live. And Tommy, I'm looking at all of that and saying, what in the world? How do we get there? That you're mad at Dr. Fauci because we have a pandemic that has taken 560,000 American lives, which that number has been multiplied because of our tribalist ignorance. And so, Tommy, where is the line between value added debate and foolish tribalism?
Oh, Eric, I want to go to the community on that one because I don't know. I don't know what type of mindset would minimize or isolate a global pandemic, not just American, a global pandemic,
Right.
and the truths that people are catching and contracting a virus and passing on,
Right.
and directing that to one person that says it'll be a recommendation to put on the mask. At the end of the day, those people, all of us, Eric, at the end of the day, we don't have to put on a mask.
Right.
That's our freedom. Now, we may not be able to get into certain private organizations or businesses,
Right.
but for crying out loud, if you don't want to wear a mask and you're blaming Dr. Fauci,
Right.
and you're blaming him without a mask on, you have freedom. I don't care if you're in your house. I don't care if you're at home or in the
Right.
mall. You have freedom.
Right.
And even if you're in the mall or a business and you are mad at Dr. Fauci and you're spewing out this venom of hatred and disapproval without a mask, what's going to happen to you or others around you? You may not care.
Right.
You may not know that somebody around you dies because of your negligence and irresponsibility.
Right. And so what we're seeing, Tommy, in part then, is we're seeing tribalism. The fuel of tribalism is about power. It's about trying to determine how I can amass attention and power and a group of people that will go where I lead them. And so people that are acting to the ends of power at any cost are so harmful to society. And yet it's so difficult to call them out because they're like I like the sirens in the mythologies that would sing songs that would draw men into the water to take their own lives. I think that's what this is. That, in other words, it's hard to fully see it when they're singing to you a song that sounds so sweet to your own ethnocentric perspective and point of view. To some extent, what they said is one of the things that you need, Tommy, to get out of this is leadership.
Okay.
They say without leadership, you don't get out of this. And so Biden, part of what Biden has to do is bring leadership that looks to bridge the gap and not further expand on the tribalistic division. And yet that's hard to do, isn't it, Tommy?
Yeah, it's hard to do.
Because the side that you're working with, they want their own vengeance. They see their own points of view. They can demonize the other side so easily and so readily. I also saw in this, Tommy, the real value. I've said this for a while, but I think we're beginning to see the value of an army of people like you, but also community organizers, activists, people, ecumenical leaders. We need all of that, man, to help us see past our own toxic brew of tribalist instincts.
Eric, I think this is a great conversation. You have me thinking, even speechless. And I appreciate you kind of bringing this up. One thing that came to mind was, when did health and safety become political? Right? When did someone's health become politicized?
Right.
And who's driving? And it's not the who as one person. It may be a system, it may be a culture. To your point that you well said around, the tribalism. And I love that about the sirens. There are people listening to the sirens, jumping in the water. They don't know how deep it is. They don't know how rough or calm it is, right? They're hypnotized and mesmerized
Right.
by the sound that reverberates with their own spirit.
Mm.
And so the siren, that reverberation,
right,
it speaks to the hate that's in me.
Mm.
And therefore I jump in the pool or the waters of hate.
Mm.
And some people say, I hear that siren of hate, that song of hate, and I've decided to remove that cord, right? And that cord is part of my identity. It takes courage, Eric. It takes courage to be self-reflective on ways that we used to behave and think and do, right? And say, I no longer want to do that. The woman beater who says, I don't want to do that anymore, right? The racist, and I want to put a pause here, Eric, for our community. I've done training over the last 3 or 4 months, if you will, around racial equity. And oftentimes people in the class, in the session, be it virtual or in person, they always seem to connect race with people of color. And most particularly just Black folks. We all have a race. So when we talk about racism is where a particular racial group is prohibited access, power, freedoms as all other peoples simply because of the skin or their race.
Right.
And so when you talk about power, Eric, and people having power and complaining, there's some people that are complaining about their loss of liberties and freedoms, but they really don't have power. Right. However, they are a siren to those who have power. And they hear my brethren who are maybe of a certain social economic status or educational status or influence and power status, they are crying out, we're losing our freedoms, and I have the power of the pen. Mm-hmm. And put that power into policy and create that policy to withstand 25, 50, 75, 100 years. And in some cases, it's a creed or a constitution that's withstood the test of time over 500 and 600 years. The power of the pen. So other folks that say, I don't have any power. You may have power. And others say, I have a whole bunch of power, right? Mm-hmm. In fact, Fauci, you're taking my power, my freedom.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you're just talking from the four walls in your place.
Right.
It's frustrating.
Right. Let's look at what the community is saying here. We're going to bring up a couple of these. Not about the right answer, rather, what's the right question? Humans move in the direction of the questions they are asked. The dominant culture puts a premium on answers. It's a trap to keep things the same.
I would agree.
Right.
I would agree.
Right. Let's see what Charlie Winburn has to say here. Why are we here in the universe in the first place? Is to bless others. People who won't wear a mask have zero interest in blessing others. And I'll tell you, I just think that what's sad about this, Tommy, is that people will literally look around and see where there are vulnerable people and try to find a wedge issue that you can garner their support, even if it's to their own demise. How do you justify that, Tommy? And I'll tell you that one of the things that this article does is it balances its sort of criticism of both sides. Mm-hmm. And it says that it becomes very difficult to work with the other side, and you're down to almost a complete stalemate. Mm-hmm. And where we are today is that there is almost no incentive at all to work with the other side. And Tommy, and so they say when you start getting there, you have to start looking at maybe a new constitution, and you have to look at a new way of doing things, because where you are right now is sort of just the Trojan horse. And everybody on the outside is sort of looking at America and having big fun, laughing at our ignorance right now, as Russia and anybody else can play with us, because they've learned our kryptonite is cultural tribalism. And so everybody wants in on it because we're ignorant. And so, Tommy, it's easy for people to say that there are folks out there doing it. It's hard for people to own that sometimes that's me.
Yes.
And that's part of what you and I try to bring to people and try to keep working on ourselves. Mm-hmm. Is where's the balance line between when I'm supposed to push the system to change and when I'm supposed to say, well, no, maybe I need to change. And I'll tell you, Tommy, I'll just go one step further. I think that exists around all of these shootings, that you do have to still be able to take them one at a time and not just put them all in a pile, because we still do need police officers. There's some people that are saying that we might need to take police officers out of traffic stops. So that may be a change that may be helpful, and put somebody else in the traffic stops. If it's expired tags and stuff like that, why does a police officer need to be in that, giving an opportunity for a death to occur? But
I think Eric, and that's a great point about the involvement of law enforcement. And as you and I talk about often about artificial intelligence, AI, there is going to be a time in the near future, how rapidly technology changes and evolves and it's implemented as well as adapted into our culture, our cultural norms. There's going to be a time in the near future where those traffic violations are going to be captured on video. Mm-hmm. And what reminded me to say that when you made your comment is that I've noticed and observed an increase of people running red lights, right? Not just, kind of rushing up and catching that yellow light underneath the light.
Looking both ways and running it.
I'm talking about a 3-lane byway, a 4-lane byway, where everyone is stopped at the red light and 1, 2, and 3 cars rush through, such that the crossing traffic has to yield on the green light.
Oh man.
Yes, I'm seeing it. I've seen an increase in different cities. And so what that looks like is that's a behavior that's becoming a norm, where police officers are not there to witness the violation. But if there was a AI, artificial intelligence, that can capture things just like going through a toll bridge. And some of you go through tolls all the time, and they take pictures and send you the payments all the time. I know for a fact. I go
Right.
through a lot of tolls.
Right.
Right. And they just send you the bill, $18, $24, whatever, and you get it 3 or 4 weeks later. And I don't even remember. Yep, they have the license plate, time, photo stamp. That may be where we're coming from, such that law enforcement can utilize their human resources and financial resources, their funding, in places that they know based on data that it's needed.
Okay.
Police stations are highly sophisticated, and in most major metropolitan cities in this country, police and fire, they yield about 70% of that city's spend, that expense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? They get the funding, but there's not enough police officers in certain places because we're not capturing those series of people that are running those red lights. That is an accident and death waiting to happen that may not even make the news such that we know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like with homicides, Eric.
Right.
There's a lot of homicides not making.
Right. Let me ask you this, Tommy. So which one is going to win the day? Our desire to elect leaders that will fight for our cultural interests, or our desire to elect leaders who will be fair to all?
Oh, we're going to elect leaders based on the cultural differences. That is going to win over. It's not about being fair.
Right.
Eric, unfortunately, I don't want to be, Downer Debbie, but I would say that folks are electing leaders because of the selfishness and the tribalism, like you mentioned, that they will do what I need them to do based on whatever category.
Right. And so we got Biden, and I think that we got Biden because he was able to win over slightly more people who thought he would be balanced. So I think that case can be made for that. In other words, the tribalist left had something else in mind. They didn't have Biden in mind,
Right.
but he was able to garner. But once he gets into position, he's being pulled apart, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Most extreme. So the most extreme is tugging real hard around, you got to do our bidding. It's our time now. And Tommy, I think that we have to keep fighting, man, for all people if we are going to be a civil society. And that's really the question. Let's see what Dan has said to us again. Chosen accountability is stronger than held accountability. The dominant culture, attachment to policies, rules, etc., keeps things the same.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
And so those are some of the challenges you see. Now let's move a little bit, Tommy, into some of what's happening in corporate America now. Okay. And so all of them are having to sign on. I like this, that companies are being pressured or asked to sort of sign on to letters that are saying that they're standing against sort of the electoral sort of control that's happening across the country, where in states, Republican legislatures are really moving to sort of, increase voter suppression. And so corporations are weighing in. Let me hear your perspective on why now corporations are weighing in. I think most of them stayed out of the Trump years. They actually, it just seemed like it was too volatile for them and the cost would be too high. And so we're seeing, companies now sign on to this letter that says voter suppression. We're, CEOs, we're standing against that. How long is that going to last? What do you think about that?
So I think it's going to last a couple of years, maybe 2 years or so, give or take, because it's just now launching. It's going to climb, come to a plateau or apex, and then continue to ebb and flow, climb and fall, climb and fall. I think the precipice is that the disenfranchised voter
Yeah,
are citizens and taxpayers and residents as well as consumers.
right.
And so the businesses, regardless of what the line of business or industry is, you have to have consumers. You have to have customers, right?
Right.
And the most effective way of branding and promoting your products and services is literally word of mouth
Mm-hmm.
through your 6 or 8 degrees of influence, telling those people to use your services. When I am unable to activate and participate in my right, my constitutional and national right to vote, I will think that it's the system that's prohibiting me to do that.
Right.
And then I align that systemic oppression with companies who are conglomerates, mega companies, that they too are part of the system.
Yep.
Companies, Eric, know this in the psyche of the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So they will write a letter, a stance that we do not agree, not don't want. We don't agree with arresting the unalienable rights of our consumers and citizens.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're saying, right? For the most part.
Right.
And these conglomerates, these large companies, are paying corporate taxes in those cities and states. It's a tremendous amount of revenue, a revenue that's paying for itself. So out of the $100 million of unemployment taxes that said company is investing in that state invests some of those dollars. And so 20-30%, just throwing out random numbers, that's invested in over a 20-30 year period. It may double or not triple.
Mm-hmm.
And the companies are saying, we know this. The jig is up.
Right.
We know you need us and we need our consumers. So we don't agree with voter suppression.
Right. And then the other thing they said in this article that creates or magnifies the problem is that politicians are working aggressively to gerrymander.
Yeah.
And they say both sides will do that.
Yep.
So it's like, Tommy, as soon as I get a majority, then we start trying to gerrymander the districts so that we don't have to negotiate at all.
Nope.
We have our people, so we no longer have to debate. And they're saying that that's part of our challenge, and it makes a nation more divided when people do not have to compromise. And I don't know, Tommy. Here's what I'm seeing, Tommy. And I think that people are going to have to rise again and take back our politics.
Okay.
Is that where we are right now is snakes and scandalous idiots are leading the way. And there is no honor or very little honor in politics. And maybe that is mirroring some of our cultural desires to have it my way. Back to Burger King. I want to have it my way. And I think that, Tommy, we've got to find ways to rise above that if this nation is to survive. And in many ways, if the world is going to survive, because what we're looking at right now, Tommy, is a world where as they begin to come up, then they need more natural resources. They consume more natural resources. And so wealthier nations are like, hey, we've had the benefit of being able to consume as much natural resources as we want. Now all these other countries are coming up. And so we're actually doing things then that are, again, stacking the deck for us and against others. Tommy, I'll say one last thing about this, because I think that what I'm saying is that inclusion is in our self-interest. So if I've said over the last month or two that people are self-interest oriented, then what we have to learn is that inclusion is ultimately in my best interest. And all you have to do is look at, I'll sort of make a point that right now the richer nations are consuming the vaccine. But they're saying there's a number that's attached to, if you allow COVID-19 to run rampant in other poorer nations, that you're ultimately going to reap the hell of that. Because the kind of what are they saying, those adaptations, what variation, the variances that get those mutations are coming here. And so if you don't address it over there, then it is coming over here. And then the people that we need to do so much of the manufacturing work of this country is affected as well. So I guess I'm trying to say we've got to find a way to help people understand that there is a case to work on more than just your own selfish self-interest.
Yeah. It's a great conversation, Eric. And I appreciate our community, again, sticking with us, chiming in, listening. But this is just a conversation.
Right. And we'll wrap up here soon if we've come to the end of our piece, because, as people weigh in, that helps us to, to add more. And we don't want to be over the heads of everybody either. And you've got other stuff to do on this Saturday afternoon, Coach, anyway. And we know that you're also recovering from that second vaccination, man. So I want to be sensitive to that. Last comment, and then if you have some final words, Tommy, you can share those, and we'll wrap to the end.
Last comment.
Industrial complex needs consumers. Okay.
Yeah. I think it's very complex. I would recommend, continuing to bring people to the table, to have the proverbial table, to have the conversation, and the saying of thinking outside the box. It's easier said than done, right? We can think outside the box once we have experienced some thinking outside the box. If we've always been in the box with everyone else in the box, that's some great thinking. I mean, it is great thinking in the box. We don't even know that we're in the box, Eric.
Right.
And let me give the other analogy. I've heard it time and time again, and you have too, with back in the day when people were poor, right? And you watch the documentary or the interview with them, and they've come through a lot of challenges to make it to some level of success. And they say, I don't even remember being poor. It didn't feel like we were poor, right? I do understand that sentiment, Eric. I do understand it. I also know that while people were living in poverty, experiencing it for whatever reason, that they either heard on the radio, saw on the television screen, or saw across the railroad tracks that there were other people living better.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a disconnect of, what I'm going to do is, I know that I am oppressed. I know that I am living in conditions less than. So I am going to psychologically blind myself to that and attach myself with the love in the community, right? The fellowship of the community. Community came together. We protected ourselves. We leveraged our resources, be it sugar or milk, and cheese, and all that good stuff. But we were in the box. We were in that box of a community, looking outside, not experiencing it, looking outside. Man, how did they get that?
Right.
And why don't I have it? And then there are some other energies that come out of that, to a point, as a collective culture, I'm going to get it, right? I'm going to get it. And I'm going to protest. I'm going to speak out. I'm going to chip away. And if it's not me, I'm going to educate my children and younger generation to chip away and do it. But yeah, when we were poor, we knew we were. right? We knew
Right.
what this
Right.
system. So
Right.
part of that is that tribalism of understanding the past, learning from the past, and trying to work toward a future that you cannot achieve alone.
Mm.
Can't achieve it alone. Those are my
Right.
final thoughts, my friend.
Well, I love that. And I would say that it's one thing to be happy in your community and just seeing somebody else over there that's living, quote unquote, a better life.
Right.
But it's another thing when they don't just stay over there.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
actually start moving you around because they say, hold up, no, we're not just happy over here. We like where you at. So we push you out of where you at and we occupy it. Or we actually need a highway to get more conveniently to other places in the country. So if you don't mind, we just gonna drop this highway in the middle of your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that I think that create problems for us. I think you and I have identified some challenges that we're facing. I think that we're saying that the answers aren't easy. And to try to go at the answers can be even exhausting. But we can't give up on this fight and give up on our communities, our country, and the world. And so, Tommy, I always, as usual, man, enjoy our conversation, this diversity conversation. We want to thank those of you that joined us today. And we want to tell you to come back next week. Bring some friends to the table. If there's topics that you want us to weigh in on and talk about, Tommy and I are both very open to that. And we'll look forward to joining you again next week. Tommy, have a great day, man. Stay safe. Get some rest.
Yes, sir.
Bye now.